Hello again, this is UML Operator. All right, in this session, we're going to talk about activity diagrams. Activity diagrams are particularly useful in modeling complex workflows, business processes, and behavior of software systems. They provide a visual representation of how different or difficult activities interact and how control flows through the system, making them valuable for communication and analysis during the design and development of a system or processes. Let's start with activities. So when you look over in the toolbar, you've got an activity and you have an action. But let's focus on activity. So an activity represents a specific unit of work or action within a system or process. It can be as simple as something like present confirmation, an order confirmation, or as complex as order processing. Activities can be decomposed into sub-activities, allowing the hierarchical modeling to represent a complex process. So for example, we've decomposed this particular model down into a particular set of activities, and we've decomposed this model down into another set of activities, which we will later join together. So these are referred to as composite diagrams. And sometimes I'll get in trouble for referring to these as composition diagrams. And composition and composite in UML terms are two different things. However, composition is a type of association that basically takes all of its parts and sets them up to be a composition relationship over the lifetime of the model. And so I agree, and I believe that's a true statement. So if you ever hear me say composition model, I mean a composite diagram, okay? So for anybody out there commenting or trolling my videos, that's the explanation for that. Next, let's focus on the action element within the toolbar here. These are actions that are in this particular composite diagram or activity diagram. So an action represents an atomic step or steps within an activity. They can be represented as rectangles with rounded corners, or they can be simply labeled with a verb phrase such as validate user. Now let's talk about control flows. These are control flows that you see here between these particular elements. So control flows are represented by the arrows that you see here and the lines that are connecting the activities and actions. They indicate the sequence in which activities or actions are executed. The direction of the arrow indicates the order of execution. Next, we're going to talk about decision nodes and merge nodes. But first, let's start with decision nodes. And decision nodes are used in modeling for branching in the process flow. They're represented by a diamond that contains conditions or guards. You see these are guards, they're right here, that determine which path to follow based on certain criteria. So I always say, think of decide or decisions of where to go. As for merges, merge nodes are used to consolidate multiple control flows. Multiple control flows, could certainly be more than two, that flow back into a single flow. They're often used in conjunction with decision nodes right here, in conjunction with, to show how different paths merge back together. So I always say, think where to go based on input, and where to merge back to. Gives you an idea what the difference between decision nodes and merge nodes are, and in the toolbar, decision nodes and merge nodes, because modelers often get in trouble when they're using these. Next, we're going to talk about forks and joins. So these happen to be vertical. You'll see in the tooling here, you have a horizontal fork or join and a vertical. So I have two verticals that are in here, right? So fork nodes split the control flow into multiple parallel paths, while join nodes Join nodes right here. You can think of this as join nodes. Bring parallel flows back together. So fork and join. All right. So use these quite a bit, especially when you're doing parallelism or parallel processing. So that's what forks and joins are. Next is initial and final nodes. Probably should have been the first one I talked about. An initial node right here represents the starting point of an activity diagram, while the final node right here represents or indicates the end of the process. All right. So in each one of these, you have an initial and a final. All right. And here you have an initial and a final, regardless of the activity elements that you're using in your models. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up now. I just wanted to cover the basics as we're getting started into the activity diagram series. I'm going to be getting into more advanced subjects, such as dealing with loop nodes, condition nodes, flow finals, sinks, and activity parameters, expansion nodes, pins, objects. There is so much to talk about. But I want to keep it simple because really, when you're doing activity diagrams, these are pretty much the elements that you're going to use, or most of you are going to use 99% of the time. All right. So thanks very much for watching. Please leave comments down below. Questions and suggestions are always great. Really appreciate the support the community's been giving lately, and I'll try to keep up with all of you. All right. And until then, happy modeling.